If we're going to have a real conversation about this, then we need to hear both sides of it. I am here on behalf of the women who have to make these decisions in the second and third trimesters because they are traumatic and the government does not need to be involved in them. And we've heard a lot of personal stories here tonight, so I'm going to share mine. In 2015, I was pregnant for the first time. I did everything right. It was planned, it was wanted. I was to the point where I knew it was going to eventually be a girl. I had a name picked out, I was planning a baby shower. At 16 and a half weeks, something felt wrong. And so I went to the doctor a couple days later, and if we're gonna be in a women's business, let's just have it all out there. I told the doctor I'd had an easy pregnancy, mild morning sickness, really good. I said, suddenly I have a weird discharge, I have cramping, I have severe fatigue. Something is wrong. And like doctors do to women in so many situations, I was told, and I'm articulate, and I will admit I have the height of privilege, I can explain myself, I can ask questions, I can advocate. And yet I was told, this is your first pregnancy. Things feel weird sometimes. You're worrying too much. Don't worry. I said, I'm leaving on a military weekend in a couple days. I'm going to be flying to another state. I feel like maybe I shouldn't do that. Go have fun. You're worrying too much. Maybe I should come back in a week for a follow-up. No, come back in a month. You don't need to be here. So I took that advice. And I would like to say that was the height of privilege, but women often aren't listened to. And it's even worse if you're a woman of color. And that's why our fetal maternal mortality rate is so horrific in this country. Because one of the possible side effects of pregnancy is death. So I went on the trip, I did what I was told, I still felt weird. I was with the hurricane hunters at the time, I was asked to go on a long mission, I was there Saturday, Sunday, I went to the flight surgeon, I was cleared. I still felt wrong. I went and asked for a second opinion, I took myself to the emergency room, and somehow between Wednesday and Sunday, I had no amniotic fluid. I was right. I was put on immediate bed rest. I wasn't even asked. I was just told what I was going to do. They couldn't give me statistics on what the percentage of viability was at that point or anything else because I asked all the questions. I just kept being told, lay there forever. There might be a chance amniotic fluid will pool. Maybe there will be a miracle. There's nothing we can do. That was the plan. The plan for potentially 4 months was for me to lay in a bed. I went with it because I wanted that pregnancy. But I remember thinking there, because you have a lot of time to think when you're laying in a bed watching your world go sideways, what if? What if when I called my work, which I had to do to say, I don't know if I'm ever coming back this year, and it was June? What if they weren't kind enough to say, we hope we don't see you for a long time because we hope this works out? What if instead I had lost my job, which so many women would? What if I had kids at home and now I was going to be incapacitated for how long? What if I hadn't been in a military hospital where all the bills were covered and now I was financially broken? And I thought about my tremendous privilege in that moment. And even today, thinking about those decisions, now that I have 3 kids at home, 2 that would be orphaned, 1 who I've had since a month old and is now 18 months, who is a foster who would be bounced back into the system, I couldn't make the same decisions because I can't orphan my kids. Because even on bed rest, I had leg compressions on a machine because I could have thrown a blood clot at any time. Those are all the things that are going through someone's head when they're trying to make these decisions. And I remember my sister calling and saying, Nicole, please don't do anything stupid. Because she knew that if I could have traded places and given up my health for a viable pregnancy, I would have. But that's not how it works. And so as days went by and nothing positive happened, I remember asking the nurse, well, what happens now that we don't have amniotic fluid? And them talking about all the things that wouldn't develop correctly. And I remember the thing that struck me the most was lungs. The lungs will not develop correctly at that point. So I could hang on for months, potentially to bear a child who would struggle to breathe and die. And I didn't want that. And so I went from being a person who had always been pro-choice, but saying, well, I wouldn't do that, to thinking, oh my God, I might have to make that decision. I was also told, when I started asking those questions, if you're thinking about abortion, don't. Because you're in a military hospital and federal funds can't be used, and so you just can't. And that's when I learned the medical exception standard is not, I'm on leg compressions because I could die at any moment because of a blood clot. You pretty much have to prove you're going to die. And that doctors are now so afraid of those repercussions when that's what the law is, that they will almost wait until you are dying to try to save you, which ups the maternal fatality rate even more. And I was in Mississippi. And now at this point, I'm at 17 and a half weeks. And in Mississippi, the cutoff is 18 weeks. And that's why I'm telling you these artificial timelines don't make sense. Because I wanted to wait, I wanted to see, I wanted to play it out as far as I could. And if I would have had to do something by that 18 weeks, I knew I could go back to another state, but not everyone can do that. I would have had to make a decision before I was ready. And that's what you're doing to women in these horrible situations when you're putting in these artificial deadlines. I was considered lucky. After several days, my fetus died. And yes, before it is born, it is a fetus. Even if I imagine it and name and think what it's going to look like, it's a fetus. And I say I was lucky because it passed naturally. I had a stillbirth. Many people in my situation, that doesn't happen. So then they have to go in and do a D&C, is what it's called, to take it out. That is still an abortion. And I remember door knocking and sharing these stories with someone, and she said, same thing. She said, mine did not expel, and they had to go in there, and I was a person who never thought I'd had an abortion that had one. I still had to have that procedure because the placenta doesn't come out normally when all of this happens, and I almost bled to death. Again, I got to make my own choices at every step of the way. But they let me bleed out so much that I literally couldn't take one step after the surgery without passing out. And they didn't tell me I'd lost that. They told me I lost a lot of blood and, oh, we probably should have given you a transfusion. I took one step, passed out, woke up with a crash cart over me. I was so disabled from that wanted pregnancy, I was disabled for a month before I could even go back to a desk job from loss of blood. I am saying all of this because none of you know when someone you care about is going to have a pregnancy go sideways. And all of a sudden, you need these rights. And I am saying this because these women who are having abortions in especially the third trimester, you don't get that far and then suddenly go, oops, I changed my mind. These are medical decisions. These are decisions about something that's going wrong with your fetus. These are heartbreaking decisions. And it hurts me, some of the things that people watching this here today have had to hear. I've heard people in this situation be called murderers, cruel, not thinking about, this or that. I guarantee you the women in these situations are heartbroken, devastated, and we do not need to add to their pain. And that is all this does. I hear a whole bunch of concern for the fetuses, but I hear a lot of a lack of concern for the actual women who are struggling with painful decisions. And so whether it be this amendment or anything similar, I am strongly against taking away the right for a pregnant person to have a conversation with their doctor, look at their entire situation, and make their own decision. And when people knew this happened to me, I had more people come to me than you would ever imagine saying something similar happened to me too. I guarantee everyone in this room knows someone this has happened to. They don't talk about it because they get name called, they get bullied, and it's hard to talk about. I cried about this for a year, every night. I still cry about it sometimes. And I can tell you the worst day of my life. It was June 9th of 2015. And a lot of people can't tell you what the worst day of their life was. I guarantee you almost any woman who's ever been in this situation can. And to take decisions away from them while they're already in their darkest hour is cruel. Thank you.
Senator